Okay, I'm gonna do my overview of Challenge 2 for the Create with Code. The first thing, or first issue that had to be solved was that dogs were spawning up at the top of the screen rather than the balls that they're supposed to catch, so came into here in the spawn manager code and made sure that the prefabs that were selected here for the different elements were the balls rather than the dogs. And another thing with that was to make sure that they were the 3 different balls there. And a similar issue, the player was spawning balls rather than the dogs, so that had to be changed with this prefab game object right there. And the other issues with the prefabs was that the dog's box collider was very large, so that had to be made smaller. And while I was doing that, I made the balls all the same size because they were different sizes to start with. Come back into primary view here. The next thing was to, we'll come into the code here, was to make sure that both the dogs and the balls were destroyed once they went off screen, so that would utilize less resources. I believe the change was to do with these greater than or equal signs, and one of these was positive, I think, to start with as well. So those had to be changed to make sure that they were giving the right values and the logic made sense. And I added in a debug game over little line there, like we did in the practice for this unit. Go through the other code here. I don't think there were any changes with the... Oh yeah, there was a change with the player controller. We'll talk about it in a second. The move forward was fine, I believe. And let's see here, detect collisions. That one was fine as well, just to make sure that the ball was destroyed when it hit the dog. And I think we're on to the bonus things now. First one that I worked on was making sure that you couldn't spam or spawn a whole bunch of dogs right next to each other. So the way that I went about solving that issue was creating this timer that adds to the time delta time. The time delta time adds to the timer, so each frame it counts up the frame time, and that is then compared to this time limit, which is preset up here, this private float variable, and when the timer value from counting up here in the seconds is greater than the time limit, and if the spacebar is pressed, then the action of the dog spawning can happen, and then after that you have to make sure that the timer gets reset so that it can go through that process again. And then the second bonus was in the spawn manager. Scroll up here so you can see everything. Again, used a timer for this, and the spawn time interval is similar to the time limit in the other one. That's what the timer value is being compared to. Just in the start here, I gave the spawn time interval its first assignment with a random range, and then the min time and max time can be set with these variables here. And then in the update here, we have the code for the timer to count up with the time double time again. And then if statement that if the timer value, which is coming from this, is greater than the spawn time interval, which in the first set is from the start here, and later comes from right here where it gets reset. So if the timer is greater than the spawn time interval, then it calls the function that's down here for spawning one of the random balls, and then resets the time interval and the timer. The time interval goes to a new random value, again with the minimum and maximum that's set up here in these variables, and the timer is back to 0 so it can start counting up again. And then this function down here for the spawning of the balls themselves, I don't believe there were any changes with that from the code that was given to us. Just calls for the balls to be spawned. There might have been a change with the range and the limits left or right with where the balls are spawning. I don't remember if that was something in there. But those are here with another random range of the variables left limit and right limit, which are assigned up here again. And that's within the vector 3 for the spawn position. And then if we come out of Visual Studio here back into the game, we can click play here. And you can see that the first ball goes, get it with the dog, and see there I messed up, and the dogs can only go at 1 second intervals there. And I chose that 1 second interval because the minimum time between the balls coming down is 1.5 seconds, so a little bit ahead of that so that you're never forced to miss a ball, theoretically, if you're doing well. And again, you can see that game over debug log down there. If we come into the inspector here, we can see the timer counting up because I left that as public just so I could see what was happening, and then the spawn time interval, you can see that changing each time one of the balls is spawned. And when that timer becomes greater than that, it spawns another one. And do a similar thing with the timer and the player controller. You can see that it's at 32 seconds right now, and if I... oh, something happened there. Let's restart this. If I restart this here, you can see that each time a dog is spawned, the timer gets reset back to 0. And if I try to spawn it, it won't let me until it gets to 1 there. I believe that is all. Those are all the challenge pieces, including the 2 bonus ones.